mistakes, have some success, have some refining moments, make some relationships, lose some relationships, and live your best life. We only have one of these, and there's no point trying to be something you're not.
Yeah.
Don't try to be something you're not, because that's the problem with the loud voices, is they go like, our way is the right way, and unless you're exactly like us, then you're something wrong with you. And they try to get into your mind and change you and try to be like, you need to conform. And it's like, you don't have to conform to the pandemic bullshit. You don't have to conform to the mandates. You don't have to conform to your job requirements. You don't have to conform to the factions on the internet. You don't have to conform to the political parties. You can be uniquely a person who's salt and light in the world and bring something great to the table. And not everyone's going to like you. They don't need to like you. But there are most people who do probably like you. They're not retarded, so they're not writing things. They're just living their life.
Hello, fellow travelers, and welcome to the Hard Light Network. Elijah Schaffer, Sydney Watson, co-hosts of the now discontinued political talk show, You Are Here, now embroiled in scandal. Sydney, originally hailing from Australia, was longtime friends with Elijah and his wife Kezia, making numerous appearances on his show, Slightly Offensive, before the two set out on a joint venture in You Are Here. From the outset, a large portion of Elijah's fan base did not take to Sydney. To many, their partnership was an odd one, with the differences in the two's opinions and approach often causing friction on set. However, the two maintained a seemingly solid relationship for the duration of the show. Despite this, many were shocked to learn when You Are Here came to an end with Elijah and Sydney parting ways seemingly for good. Recently, Sydney Watson released a statement through her legal counsel of her intentions to sue Blaze TV in conjunction with several allegations centered around Elijah Schaffer's alleged conduct both on and off set. Many of the details relating to this event were related to the public by Twitter user Patriot J. Sydney Watson is suing the Blaze for retaliation, wrongful termination, and sex and religious discrimination based on an alleged abuse perpetrated by Elijah Schaffer, according to the copy of the complaint obtained and reviewed by Patriot J. Through her counsel, Kurt Schleider, Watson on Wednesday filed a 4-count lawsuit against Blaze Media in federal court that alleges Glenn Beck's media empire created and tolerated a hostile work environment and allowed sexual harassment, retaliation, and discrimination against her on the basis of her sex and religion. Watson and Schaffer starred in the widely beloved You Are Here Blaze TV podcast from September 2021 through April 2022. Per the complaint, the maximum value of Watson's multi-year agreement with Blaze was approximately $1,275,000. However, the 7-figure deal is only one reason why she signed the contract with Blaze. Watson chose Blaze because the company represented itself as an incubator of talent and pointed to Dana Loesch and Tommy Lahiren's success as evidence of such. She also said the company's moral values were important to her. Unfortunately, Trouble in Paradise began as early as December 2021, leading to multiple complaints made to management and weekly interactions with them since January 2022. Watson complained to Blaze's leadership of Schaffer's misogyny, drinking on set, and grossly sexual nature, but Blaze refused to act because he was their star and primary asset, which, as a result, failed to protect Watson's right and the integrity of the program. Rather than act on her complaints, Blaze instead opted to cater to the demands, tantrums, and misbehavior of Schaffer, the complaint alleges. Watson claims Schaffer's persona on You Are Here became increasingly aggressive and soon began to veer into outright misogyny. He appeared to enjoy the intimidation factor that his physical size gave him with respect to Miss Watson, according to the complaint. The choice of guests compounded Miss Watson's growing discomfort with the anti-female tone of the show and off-air interactions with her co-host. Notably, Watson points to You Are Here's December 3rd episode featuring notorious bigot Nick Fuentes as evidence of the increasingly hostile work environment. He was grossly misogynistic, and most troubling was how this appeared to be condoned by Mr. Schaffer, Watson says of Fuentes' appearance. It was about this time that the environment on the production began to become noticeably more hostile, not merely to Miss Watson, but to many of the women at Blaze. Next, Watson points at the infamous Jack Murphey Live episode and Schaffer's reaction as another example of the sexist hostile workplace. Watson claims Schaffer refused to control Murphy because Watson as a woman would have looked weaker if Schaffer had demanded his guest stop his abuse. Watson accused Schaefer of unilaterally booking several guests with the particularly contemptible and sexist opinions toward women. After the show returned from the holiday break January 2022, as a serious journalist, Watson did not agree to assume the role of the designated punching bag for the sexist guests and for Mr. Schaefer himself, nor was she warned about it in advance, according to the complaint. Watson said the alleged conduct is appalling, particularly in light of the Blaze's representation to its audience of largely conservative Americans that it stood for solid traditional values. The complaint also takes a shot at You Are Here's most loyal viewers. Watson blasted Schaefer for cultivating an audience that uses the idea of being traditional as a cover for its extreme misogyny. Such viewers often flooded You Are Here's discussions with super chats and grossly sexist comments, as well as anti-Jewish commentary that made Miss Watson extremely uncomfortable and prevented her from performing her duties as she wished, the complaint states. The audience members encouraged Mr. Schaefer's conduct, attacked Miss Watson so often and so intensely that other guests noted it and were put off. Schaefer and the audience had a running gag for Watson to read fans' super chats that were allegedly coded dog whistles that referred to grossly misogynistic and or anti-Semitic comments, unbeknownst to Watson. Schaefer encouraged this humiliation despite her complaints to him and management. Watson is suing for religious discrimination because Schaefer consistently made disrespectful comments about her being an atheist, which encouraged the audience to attack her. Much of the alleged conduct was contributed to the hostile work environment was explicitly sexual in nature. Schaefer would endlessly reference sex, often specifically gay sex, and discuss penises, among other sexual matters, often graphically, in front of the guests and Miss Watson. Schaefer's sexual comments were so pervasive that at one point, Blaze CEO Tyler Carden asked Miss Watson to get Mr. Schaefer to stop talking about dicks so much. However, Watson told Carden to speak with Schaefer because Schaefer allegedly refused to listen to women. Schaefer's apparent refusal to listen to women was insulting and damaged Watson's ability to perform her duties. Watson also complained that it was impossible to work professionally in an environment where Schaefer was drunk and impaired, as he would do shots of hard liquor before many of the shows. The You Are Here team held a 2-hour meeting in March, which the Blaze president Gaston Mooney was present for, where Watson expressed how Schaefer's constant sexism and hostile, unprofessional behavior on the show distracted and humiliated her, making it impossible for her to do her job. Watson allegedly told Schaefer point blank that the sexism bothered her and made her want to quit. Schaefer then had a tantrum where he refused to sit on You Are Here production meetings until his demands were met. Frustrated with Watson's disapproval of You Are Here's guests, Schaefer refused to help select guests, which increased the burden on Miss Watson. Blaze repeatedly promised to take corrective actions, but ultimately failed to act. Watson notes that Schaefer's social media interactions are a component of this participation in the show, and he used these interactions to continue his harassment. Watson pointed to this April tweet from Schaefer in response to Seb Gorka as evidence of the online harassment. Here he says, "I hope she sees this and sleeps with you," in response to, "I bet he wouldn't just sit there like a coward when a man cussed out a woman in front of him, eh, Elijah?" in reference to the earlier Jack Murphey incident. After that April tweet, Watson told the Blaze CEO Carden and President Gaston that she could no longer continue working on You Are Here. Carden then informed Schaefer of Watson's departure and told him the show was over. A few weeks after leaving You Are Here, Blaze gave Watson the green light to issue a public statement explaining You Are Here's conclusion. "I left the show. There were a multitude of reasons for doing so," Watson said in a statement in May. "Ultimately, the professional situation morphed into something untenable." However, she reminded her followers that she didn't get fired. At the same time, Schaefer tweeted, "Finding out about my show's future on Twitter along with the public like melty smiley face." In response, Watson said that he had known for weeks and that the show was over and blasted him, adding further dishonesty to the rumor mill. Side note, I tried to find You Are Here clips to add to this thread, but it appears Blaze has made every episode private and rebranded the channel for the recent launch of Primetime with Alex Stein 99. Watson's complaint goes on to accuse Schaefer of telling several people, including InfoWars' Harrison Smith and Tucker Carlson's Originals director Scooter Downey that he had to sue Watson to keep her quiet because she allegedly tried to get Schaefer's wife to divorce him. She also alleged that Schaefer falsely told several people that Miss Watson had made passes at him and tried to hit on him on more than one occasion. Watson argues Blaze constructively terminated her employment agreement spring 2022 or actively terminated it in July 2022 after she complained about her former co-host's conduct. In September 2022, Blaze ultimately cut ties with Schaefer after an investigation regarding a recent personal matter. Watson is seeking damages for mental anguish, pain and suffering, lost wages and benefits, both back pay and front pay, punitive damages in the highest amount under the law, and an award of attorney's fees. But for the discriminatory and retaliatory actions by the Blaze based on Miss Watson's sex and religion, Miss Watson would have continued to thrive and develop her career. In response to these developments, I'd like to give you guys my take. Please keep in mind that without further information, we may not really know what took place between Sydney and Elijah specifically, as well as Blaze TV staff more generally. With Sydney publicly stating that she cannot or will not comment on the situation further, as well as her declaration of counsel, it seems likely that they will be moving forward with some sort of legal action against the Blaze. Full disclosure, guys, I was actually a longtime viewer of You Are Here, and even contributed to the show via super chats as far back as 2021. And I remember the tone and interactions from a lot of the shows, even though they have scrubbed the entire catalog off the now rebranded YouTube channel. The initial claims from Kurt Schleider about the alleged hostile work environment and sexual harassment, retaliation, and discrimination against her on the basis of her sex and religion immediately sticks out to me. Both Elijah and Sydney were open about their particular religious beliefs, or lack thereof. In fact, it was a key part of their dialogue, considering this was one of their big differences, with Sydney being an avowed atheist or more agnostic leaning at times, and Elijah being a staunch evangelical Christian. In my opinion, it seemed like Sydney was still figuring stuff out about her spirituality, or lack thereof, while Elijah was becoming more certain and more dogmatic, and the tensions caused by that could have definitely contributed to this outcome. The next allegation about the Blaze's supposed favoritism towards Elijah strikes me as odd as well, and maybe even a little unfounded. Maybe Sydney felt this way because she always got a ton of hate from the audience whenever she had a bad take, but Elijah was not the Blaze's biggest star. With Glenn Beck and the Rubin Report on the roster, Elijah's show was certainly growing in popularity, but it wasn't their largest show at all. I'm also a little skeptical of the claim that the Blaze was capitulating to Elijah's supposed demands, tantrums, and misbehavior. In fact, it seemed like towards the end of the show's life that it was the opposite. They constantly moved and downsized the set, they lost money, and I distinctly remember Elijah being told on numerous occasions that he was on thin ice due to some of his more alt-light takes, rather than any real misogyny. I just personally find it difficult to believe that this sort of behavior would be tolerated, let alone rewarded, by the Blaze at all. I can't speak for how Sydney felt around Elijah, or how he behaved off-set. He does have a tendency to be loud, and is a decently large guy, but I don't remember a single instance of Elijah getting physical on set with anyone, or using any sort of intimidation even, at any point. I think this specific accusation is even harder to prove because the real question isn't if she felt threatened, it's if he actually threatened her or not. That's a hard place for her to be in, because even if she felt bothered by his volume or big sweeping movements, that doesn't mean he intended any ill will towards her. However, when it comes to the issue of guest selection for the show, this is where I start to get a little bit bothered by Sydney's take. First and foremost, Sydney has presented herself as an advocate for free speech in the public arena. Also, she claims to be a serious journalist, and I can appreciate that. But don't serious journalists have panels with people they disagree with all the time? It seems to me having conversations with controversial and offensive guests is part of the job, and kind of part of being on the internet. Again, I can completely understand if she was uncomfortable or bothered by some of the things Nick Fuentes said on the show, but that doesn't mean it was a targeted harassment campaign. That leads me to this claim about their one-time guest, Jack Murphey. For those of you who don't know, Jack is a lifestyle and motivational coach for men who was caught up in a bit of cuckoldry. Prior to coming on the show, he had written an article detailing his cuckold experience and enjoyment of it. The article was still freely available to the public at the time of the interview, and as well as after. However, The hosts of You Are Here were supposedly unaware of it. While unknowingly reading super chats that referenced the event, Sydney was accosted by Jack, who proceeded to berate her and insult her, leading to a short break in the show. She says it was sexist of Elijah not to step in and stop the anger, but in his defense, I'm sure that he was just as surprised as Sydney about Jack's tirade. She says his attitude that stepping in would have made her look weaker is evidence of his sexism, but Sydney is an openly proud woman. She is classically feminist, and it's not a stretch to see the point Elijah was making. Maybe he did genuinely think Sydney would have preferred to defend herself. Regardless, Elijah actually did defend Sydney. He spoke to Jack offset before posting on the official You Are Here page that Sid did nothing wrong. He was clearly in her corner during this altercation. What was he supposed to do? Hit him? This leads me to my final issue on these particular issues. Why is Elijah being held personally responsible for the actions and opinions of the show's guests? And why is she suing Blaze for Elijah's alleged actions? Controversy aside, everyone there is an adult. And like I said earlier, Sydney claims to be pro-free speech. So my question is, what does that even mean? She claims Elijah's persona and the views of the guests on the show, as well as the audience, use the label of traditional values as a cover for their misogyny. Even though she got a lot of hate from the audience, Elijah always defended her role on the show as co-host. At the end of the day, the majority of the audience of You Are Here was carried over from Elijah's other show. A fact that I feel was made more evident when Alex Stein moved in to take control of the show. I don't feel like Sydney had the pull to keep the show going on her own. I feel like that must have made her feel snubbed in many aspects. I genuinely feel as though many of these claims feel more like backhanded and snide comments rather than allegations of actually criminal behavior. I feel like these are deeply personal grievances being pursued through legal means. Without further evidence of any actual criminal behavior though, I'm not a lawyer, but I don't feel like the behavior outlined in these allegations satisfies the criminal requirements for harassment or discrimination. That being said, this video is not an attack on Sydney, and it isn't a defense of Elijah. In cases like this, we have to maintain the presumption of innocence. I think Elijah's conduct can be boorish and even cross over into vulgar territory. As a longtime viewer, I actually agree with Sydney that it was incredibly unprofessional. But I also think it's really easy to get in the weeds when accusing someone of wrongdoing. It's easy to go back and reframe a situation in your favor, especially when the story is one-sided. As of the recording of this video, neither Elijah nor the Blaze have made a statement in response to these claims from Sydney. And until this goes to court, if it does, we may never hear their side of the story.
I mean, then if you change pace to, again, this walkout, I don't know how you feel about Disney, but I was reading that they've now reintroduced their gay kiss in the light. What's Buzz Lightyear movie?
Buzz Lightyear.
There's a gay kiss in that movie, Brandon?
Yeah, now
There
is.
wasn't. There is now.
There is
I
now.
guarantee you know where it's not going to be? In the China version.
Oh yeah.
Oh, no way.
Dude, when I found out that in some of these countries they Photoshop women out of the
poster.
the posters,
And
I was like, God, you're such hypocrites. And they subject us to this bullshit while they play a different game overseas. They like fried rice. They eat fried rice. They eat
Why
rice
do you
a
say
lot.
it like that? Why when you talk about Asians, you go from saying, yeah, you could be like, Asians like fried rice. You go, Asians like fried rice.
She's
They love
coached
fried-
with. She's coached with
Asians
switching,
love
as
fried
they
rice.
say.
It's like you immediately go to this.
I'm
Like,
code
I love orange
switching.
chicken. I love orange chicken. You
Dude, also
say
just-
Asian foods in their
No, I
dialect.
don't. No, I don't.
Fried rice. They like fried rice. They eat fried rice.
And we kept going, do you want a fried rice? To one of, and we're just going,
one of
you
you guys-
don't want a
if
fried
one
rice?
of
You
you
want
guys-
a chopstick? Like,
A Mexican accent.
I like the taco. No, it's that. Me gustan los churros. I'm just going to do like the rest of the show in a full and Scottish
I'm getting
accent.
tired.
Shirley Skeptic says, Mike Oxbig is my closest friend. Can you help me get him a date?
I mean, no.
Mike Cox.
We are not.
You are here, fool.
Thank you guys for watching. If you liked the video, leave a like, and until next time, love you guys, safe travels.